the IDF and Shin Bet thwarted a plot to assassinate the national security minister of Israel, Itamar Ben-Gvir. We got word that Hamas has released a new proof of life video from one of the hostages. The highlights are the Houthis are accusing Saudi Arabia of taking down their missiles as their missiles are on their way to Israel. An important leader in the Palestinian Islamic Jihad found refuge in Egypt, and he's now hiding out in Egypt. He apparently escaped from Gaza and went to Egypt, so that's exciting. Turkey is hosting Hamas leaders, and we're going to talk more about that with this assassination plot. And there's a new satellite that's been launched by Israel that may change the game. And so also, Smotrich unveils a new sovereignty plan to take over 82% of Judea and Samaria, and says that will put to bed the idea of a two-state solution because Israel's going to declare sovereignty over most of the land. Okay, now, first let's talk about what happened with the national security minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir. I have some video of him where he went up on the Temple Mount recently and prayed on the Temple Mount. Check this out. They got mad at Itamar Ben-Gvir when he went up on the Temple Mount and said a quiet prayer, standing quietly. It's not like he was doing anything crazy. There were people there who were singing and making more noise, for sure, but the minister was not. All that to say, Ben-Gvir going up there put a target on him bigger than he had before. Now, he already had a target, and you can see watching this video, I'll turn the sound down a little bit. Those guys in the masks are his security detail. And I don't know why all of the secret security guys in Israel wear masks like that, maybe just to preserve their identities, but they do, and Gvir has to have a lot of security. But what they found was that there was a cell of terrorists who was planning to assassinate Ben-Gvir with a drone. So an investigation revealed that the suspects acquired multiple different kinds of drones. I'll show you some in a minute. And they were from the area of Hebron, but when they were arrested, it was found out that they were being operated by a Hamas cell in Turkey. So what does that tell us? Hamas is operating in Turkey unimpeded. They still have people in Judea, Samaria, and Hebron. We know they've got people in Lebanon. They probably have people in Jordan and Syria. So if Israel manages to wipe out Hamas in Gaza, they're not anywhere close to done yet because there's a lot more Hamas where that came from. In this case, they busted this cell in Hebron that was being directed by a Hamas cell in Turkey, and they had these drones that look like this. Now, the drone on the left in the white box is a DJI Avata. That's an FPV drone, first-person view. The one on the right is a DJI Mavic drone, it looks like. And both of these drones are quite dangerous by themselves. That FPV drone, the Avata, can fly 50 or 60 miles an hour. And even if you just ran it into somebody, you can hurt them pretty bad. And people have been hurt pretty bad when they get hit with those things. They also have enough payload capacity, meaning they can pick up more than their own weight, that they could easily carry a hand grenade, shaped charge, mortar shell. That's what we see in Ukraine a lot. Now, most of the drones these days in Ukraine are purpose-built to be suicide drones. They're manufactured in Ukraine at scale. But at the beginning of the war, they were using these kinds of drones. And this thing weighs just under the legal limit so that you don't have to register it in the United States. 249 grams when it's flying. And these things, they have tremendous range. This one can go more than 15, up to about 15 kilometers from the controller unit. So 7 miles, something like that. And if you were going one way, it could actually go further than that if you didn't want to bring it home again. Imagine just strapping a hand grenade to this thing. It's the size of a baseball. And then figuring out that what they do is they set it up so that they rewire it, take this thing apart. They rewire that actuator switch to an actual actuator that will open and close a claw kind of thing that goes underneath here. And then when you go to turn on the light, it opens the claw. And so you put a hand grenade in there with the spoon on it. You close the claw on it so it's holding the spoon. And then you fly it over the bad guy and you hit the light switch. It opens that up and drops it onto people. I've got lots of videos of that happening in Iraq and Syria and other places as well. And that's a very small, commercially available drone. There's more than 3 million drones in the United States just from DJI alone. Now here's an even smaller drone by DJI. This is a Neo, I believe it's called. And this one's only 150 grams, but it can still fly about 7 kilometers. So I don't know what the payload would be on that. I don't know how far it could go with a grenade or something like that, but certainly works for surveillance. And you get this thing 100 feet in the air, you can't see it, you can't hear it, nobody knows it's there. But you get the point. These things are easy to get, they're cheap, they're effective, and they have been used to kill lots and lots of people already in combat environments, in not just Ukraine, but in Syria and Iraq and other places as well. There was an attempted drone assassination on President Nicolas Maduro several years ago. As he was at a parade, watching a military parade in Caracas, they flew a drone over him and exploded. It exploded prematurely or something, and he wasn't injured, but could have gotten him. So you can imagine Smotrich is out there, his next trip up to the Temple Mount. It's wide open up there. Somebody pops up a drone, flies it in there. What are those security guys going to do? They don't have a shotgun, probably. And even if they did, they'd have to be pretty good to hit something going 100 miles an hour. What's even scarier than that is that there are software packages out there nowadays that will let you link up a bunch of drones like this and fly them all together in a swarm. So you can give them an objective. That objective could literally be a car, a house, a location, or not too long in the distant future, a face. You could have them looking for a face, and you could launch those things, send them out, and give them instructions to attack, even if they are beyond the visual line of sight from the controller, and have them work autonomously. That's what Ukraine just did not long ago inside Russia. They popped up several hundred drones that were smuggled into Russia and attacked a bunch of bombers, irreplaceable Russian bombers that were being used to bomb Ukraine. And what they did is they programmed those things with AI that if they lost contact with the controller because they were being jammed or whatever, just use the camera on the drone to look for something that was the size and shape of a bomber and then go blow up that, go hit that. So that's already happened in combat as we speak. And so you can't understate the danger of being some national leader like Itamar Ben-Gvir being assassinated with a drone. That's a big deal. So I'm just going to read you part of the story from Israel Hayom here. It says, Shin Bet investigation revealed that during their activities, the suspects purchased multiple drones on which they planned to mount explosives to execute the attack. The drones were confiscated during their arrest. Now, this isn't the first time that Ben-Gvir has been targeted. In November 2024, authorities filed an indictment against another cell that attempted to assassinate Ben-Gvir. According to the indictment, a man named Ismail Ibrahim Awadi, the primary defendant, began working in June 2024 to establish a military cell aimed at harming Israeli security forces and civilians. During his activities, he established contact with Hamas and Hezbollah terror organizations, attempting to secure funding and guidance for the cell's operations. He also worked to acquire weapons and produce explosive devices. So he wasn't even thinking to do it with drones. He was just thinking to get explosives or guns or something and do it that way. But you can see how this is evolving. And this is, again, something to take very seriously. Now, satellite imagery shows that there's a new nuclear reactor being built in the Middle East. And as I said before, it is definitely raising some eyebrows. Take a guess which country is building it. I'll give you just a second to do that. So the Israelis launched a military space program. Their satellite called Ofik 19 was successfully launched. It's a reconnaissance satellite, and it has a lot of capabilities. It has track aircraft, to see incoming missiles, to peer using infrared, radar, different things like that. So it's a very capable satellite, and is far more capable even than the United States has, than much of the satellites the United States have up. The new nuclear facility is being built at the Dimona Nuclear Research Center in southern Israel. So that's the new facility that's being built. They think it's a heavy water reactor, and it's out in the middle of the desert. Now, inside Gaza, they put out the call for a bunch of reservists, and they had 40,000 reservists answer the call. Now, Israel is telling the people in Gaza City, look, the place where you live is about to become a war zone, and you don't want to be there for that. So it's time for you to leave. And we will encourage you to leave by setting up aid stations and humanitarian distribution points in the parts of Gaza where we want you to go. Now, there have been reports that Hamas has been blocking people from leaving Gaza City because Hamas wants to use them as human shields. And so they've been threatening people. They're setting up checkpoints and threatening people, telling them you can't leave. Now, Israel continues to talk about wanting to allow people to leave Gaza if they so desire. Now, they're not yet talking about forcibly relocating people from Gaza to somewhere else. They are certainly forcibly relocating them within Gaza between neighborhoods, from one neighborhood to another, and they've been doing that throughout the entire war. Many of those reservists that are being called up, by the way, have already been to war many times. Some of them are on their 9th deployment into Gaza, if you can believe that. The Israeli government is saying, we want to give the Gazans the freedom to leave Gaza and go someplace else. And we're working with other countries like Algeria and Sudan and Libya and Ethiopia and Indonesia and places like that, that would take in Gaza. Now, it's not like the ethnic cleansing that took place by Azerbaijan on Armenians in the Nagorno-Karabakh district, because Azerbaijan came in, and while on paper they said, oh, this is voluntary, nobody has to leave, what they found was that the people who didn't leave got either killed or put in jail. So it was very clear that the Armenians would not be welcome in an Azeri-run government governing the Nagorno-Karabakh district. And so all of them left because they really didn't have a choice. In Gaza, they certainly would have a choice, but nobody wants them to leave. And I have this interview with a Gazan man who was complaining about this. And he's saying to the Europeans who are saying, no, Gazans shouldn't leave Gaza. That's their homeland. They want to stay there. What he says is, I don't care, homeland or not, I don't want to be here. The only reason that those people in Europe want us to stay here is because they want us to die for their politics, and we don't want to. So I want you to listen to this guy from Gaza, because he's speaking English and he's got some very good points to make.
I don't know why you would call someone trying to survive a traitor. And if you call me a traitor for wanting to live life whilst you're sitting in God knows where, in a hotel in God knows where, who are you to speak? Why would you call me a traitor for wanting to continue my life? Why are you calling me a traitor for wanting to live a life just like you, trying to live a life normally? It's as if that we're just meant to die as Palestinians. It's just as if we're meant to die for you. You don't want to die? You're a traitor. Why would you even say that? That's so... Calling me a traitor for wanting to live a life normally, like any other human being, is so sickening. Are we a circus to you? Is our only purpose as Palestinians being seen dead on a TV? Is that really how inhumane we are? Is that really how, not valuable we are and valuable to the world? We're all humans at the end of the day. We all bleed red. All of our lives are equal. And calling me a traitor on top of that, on top of wanting to not go what I'm going through right now. If you're calling me a traitor for this, shame on you. And I hope you don't experience what I'm going through. Because if you did, you would shut your mouth and you wouldn't say anything right now.
Those people ought to have the freedom to go live someplace else if they want, as long as someplace else is willing to take them. You can't go and force yourself on another country, but there are countries that are willing to take them. So there you go. The Houthis are fleeing the capital of Sana'a, especially the leadership, anybody that's in the police, the military, government, anything like that. They are all getting out of there immediately. There's some reports coming out that they are taking advantage of flights that are chartered by the United Nations to get out of Yemen altogether. And if the United Nations is assisting the terrorist government of the Houthis to hide their top leaders and their elites, number one, I'm not surprised. Number two, the UN needs to be roundly condemned for that. And that's hard for me to believe because the Houthis literally just kidnapped 11 UN aid workers from the World Food Program in Sana'a and Hodeidah. Crazy to think that the UN might be giving them rides on airplanes unless they just aren't giving them a choice. These guys show up with guns. They say, you're letting us on the plane or else. And they get on the plane. So they're essentially hijacking those planes, perhaps. I don't know. Either way, it doesn't matter. They can run. They'll just die tired because Israel still can find them. And they are still hunting those guys because the Houthis fired 2 more missiles at Israel just in the last 24 hours. One of them made it all the way to the Dead Sea, so it made it into Israeli airspace. The Houthis claim it was a cluster munition. It was taken down by an interceptor. The other missile didn't even make it into Israeli airspace. It fell in the Red Sea somewhere. So the Houthis still continue to make a nuisance of themselves. And after we wiped out all but 4 of their ministers and about 50% of their cabinet. And so we'll see what happens there, but it's likely that there will be more strikes on the Houthis in the coming days. Israel still can find them, and they are still hunting those guys because the Houthis fired 2 more missiles at Israel just in the last 24 hours. One of them made it all the way to the Dead Sea, so it made it into Israeli airspace. The Houthis claim it was a cluster munition. It was taken down by an interceptor. The other missile didn't even make it into Israeli airspace. It fell in the Red Sea somewhere. So the Houthis still continue to make a nuisance of themselves even after we wiped out all but 4 of their ministers and about 50% of their cabinet. And so we'll see what happens there, but it's likely that there will be more strikes on the Houthis in the coming days.